Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Ground and Pound podcast, a show where, as always, we're hitting you with them elbows of knowledge. And UFC Vancouver is this Saturday. Jourdain taking on Allen in the main event. And as always, Carlos and I are here to break down the entire card, starting with the early prelims, heading to the main event. And I've already introduced him, but he always gets his own introduction. My co-host, Carlos. What's happening, Carlos?
Absolutely nothing, brother.
And we're going to kick things off in the early prelim opener of Tainara Lisboa taking on Melissa Croden. UFC debut for Croden. Carlos, who you got in this matchup?
I'm going to go with the debuting Croden here. I think both women can stand and trade with strikes pretty good. I think Lisboa's game to do that. Um, Both have the ability to fight on the ground. I think Lisboa, and especially in her last fight, had some. Well, I think it was her last fight, but was against Oliveira, and she was able to control her pretty good on the ground at certain points. I mean, there was scrambles, and Oliveira did get the best of some of the scrambles, but it was more of a grappling exchange in that for her, and she did very well. And I'm trying to think, is that because Oliveira was not the best grappler? She was more of a stand-up striker, and what I'm thinking is she can at least be competent on the ground with Croden, and I think Croden has very good balance and top control because her ground and pound is very solid when she's on top, and she's very hard to move. And even her strikes on the top, this is the only reason why I'm going to go with her is when she's standing or on top and ground and pound. It looks like because she has some finishes by KO and ground and pound, she has a little extra sting on some of her punches. I'm going to believe that. They're sharp, they're long, and you could see her opponents, like, when she's striking them, like, you see their head snap back a little bit. I'm going to take her because I think she could be a little bit more dangerous on the feet, and I think Lisboa wants to stay on the feet. I think if it goes to the ground, she's going to be forced to take it there, and I think Croden would probably get the better of her down there as well.
Just to let you know as well, Luana Santos was Lisboa's last opponent.
Okay.
Oliveira was the one she fought before that, and she did have a little bit more success in the grappling in that one. You're quite correct. But one of the things that actually pointed me towards the side of Croden is actually the lack of ground game from Lisboa. We saw in that previous fight against Luana Santos that I think that Lisboa, coming off of that 16-month hiatus with that reconstructive knee surgery that she had, her grappling looked like absolute zero, as the Dagestanis would say. She was taken down repeatedly in that fight. She was controlled on the ground and ultimately was submitted with an Americana in the second round from a judo practitioner in Santos. And I've seen with Croden here that both women, Muay Thai strikers, obviously Lisboa more decorated, a two-time Muay Thai world champion, but I feel like these world Muay Thai champion credentials get kind of handed out now like boxes, boxes of cookies and Happy Meals and all that stuff. It's like one of those little toys that you get in the Happy Meals. I don't see the striking being all that much of a problem, and I definitely don't think that she's that much better in terms of the striking and the Muay Thai than Croden here. I think Croden's the better athlete as well. When you watch tape on her, she's got a really nice high kick, really nice step in 1-2. I think she's a much better athlete. There's going to be a speed advantage here for Croden, even though they are roughly the same age. Obviously making her UFC debut in her home country. She's actually a hometown girl as well. She is from Vancouver as well. So the crowd is definitely going to be on her side here. And I just don't really trust Lisboa after that last performance. She looked like, the long hiatus had really caused her a lot of problems. She hadn't been able to defend takedowns and work on her grappling. And I do think that the striking is there for Lisboa, but if she's got to worry about the takedowns, I think Croyden's going to be able to get into the clinch here, get some body locks, get her to the ground, and ultimately be able to take Lisboa down, not at will, but it's always going to be in the back of Lisboa's mind. And I think when it comes to the striking, that Croden's shown me enough here on the feet that she can hang with Lisboa. I know that Lisboa has beaten Valentina Shevchenko in a Muay Thai fight previously and earlier on in her career, but she definitely looks like a former shadow of herself. So give me Melissa Croden here. I was going to make her the dog of the week, but unfortunately I couldn't get the video out on time. It's now even money at -110, but I like Croden in a big way this week. So if you can get her here at -110, I definitely recommend betting on her. I think Lisboa's shot. And as always, I'm nice and kind in the way that I, put my breakdowns. But yeah, I think Lisboa's done, and I think she should hang her gloves up. But in the next fight, we have Azamat Bekoev taking on UFC Bulgaria. Carlos, Who you got in this one?
Um, I ended up going with Bekoev. I from what I saw from Bel Belgaroui, um, I do like how he fights. You know, it looks like he's heavy-handed. He doesn't really have to like swing as hard into everything he's doing, whether he's throwing kicks, punches, elbows, and it looks like he's doing some good damage. The thing is I think if he turns it up a little bit, he could probably get some of his opponents out of there. I think he's just a little too worried sometimes about getting taken down, and so far looks has looked pretty good. But I think Bekoev, from what I saw in a couple of his fights, like he's gonna try to stand with you, and he has good power in close range. You know, um, I just think that if it gets out of hand on the feet, he's got that extra. You know, he's got that extra bit of skill where he's going to take him down. Now, the other thing goes is he times his takedowns very well. He's not going to wait until he's losing on the feet. Once he knows he loses an exchange in some of his previous fights, he goes right to the ground and he doesn't hesitate. So that just shows a high level of fight IQ there. So I'm going to go with Bekoev to get it done. Can he get the KO? Maybe if it's ground and pound, but on the feet, I don't know if he can close the distance enough to land a bomb, but it's possible.
Yeah, definitely a big height and reach advantage here for. I'm going to give that name a go again. Bagori. I'm not sure how it's pronounced, but the Dutch kickboxer here, training out of Glover Teixeira's gym, former opponent of Alex Pereira over in kickboxing, and he's got a one-on-one record over in Contender Series as well. He did lose to Marco Tulio. Obviously, he's gone on to look pretty decent inside the UFC, but in that fight, he struggled with the sort of the pressure and the mixing in the takedowns of Tulio as well. And I definitely think that's a path that me and my homie Azamat could definitely come forward and have that same approach with the heavy forward pressure. And like Carlos mentioned, that when he starts losing the striking exchanges, he won't hesitate to get back to his roots in his wrestling. And we haven't seen a whole lot of Bekoev's wrestling inside the UFC. He comes in, knocks out Zach Reese inside the first round, knocks out Ryan Loder inside the first round. So obviously the guy, you know, he's getting it done in a big way. Maybe he falls in love with the power, falls in love with his hands, and decides just to walk down the more credentialed, you know, long rangy kickboxer here and gets caught. But I got to go with Azamat. He's got more paths to victory here. Obviously, Blagora could definitely catch him on the feet with a nice straight shot down the pipe. A lot of Bekoev's a lot of his Bekoev striking is very looping, so he does leave holes, especially for the 6 foot to 6 foot, 6'5" height difference here. I definitely think there's going to be openings here for Belgaroui to take advantage of on the feet, but I just trust the fact that Bekoev is probably going to wrestle if things get heated here. If things get messy, he's going to be able to duck under for a level change. It sometimes is difficult to take down 6'5" guys, you know, when the tall guys, you know, have better balance, but I just believe the wrestling's going to be enough here for Bekoev if he needs to be able to get this fight to the ground. But I saw the odds on this one. I don't know if you got a chance to see the odds for this fight, Carlos, but Bekoev's a pretty big favorite. I don't really agree with how big the line is. I think it's just a case of, you know, Bekoev's knocked out two guys in the first round, so there's a lot of hype behind him, whereas Belgaroui here is one-on-one in Contender Series, and this is UFC debut. But when you're that big and you generate that much power on your strikes, and you're the one with the striking advantage, I think minus 400, minus 500 is kind of crazy. But I do think Azamat just having the more well-rounded MMA game here is definitely going to be enough for him to get this one done. So give me Azamat Bekoev here, mixing in the wrestling, but definitely not a parlay. He looks like the kind of guy that busts your parlay this week is basically what I'm getting at.
Mhm.
And next up, we have Ravana Oliveira taking on Stephanie Luciano. And I'm going to pass this one to you, big fella. Who you got in this one?
Well, I'm going to take Luciano because Oliveira is who I was talking about in the first fight, and if Lisboa, she made her look like a world-class grappler, I'm going to kind of lean on Luciano here. But I do think that the threat being posed is that Luciano here wants to stay on the feet too, and Oliveira's, she can sting you. Like she's quick, she's a little wild with some of her looping shots, but um, she can do some damage. So Luciano here is going to have to keep her guard up, keep her distance, come in, pick her spots, And if she can implement grappling, I just haven't seen enough of it. It'd be great if she did. But if she didn't, I think she stays loose enough, and I think she moves enough to give Oliveira a hard time. And she doesn't overcommit to shots like Oliveira does. If Oliveira steps in to throw a hook, her whole body's coming with it. She's gonna, you know, pick you off a little bit and try to throw something solid. So I'm gonna take Luciano here. I think she's gonna get the better of it.
Yeah, I agree. Two for Stephanie Luciano here. We haven't seen Oliveira since October 14th, 2023, so a pretty long layoff for her. Maybe she comes back and looks like an absolute world beater. Who knows? That's the difficulty of predicting this crazy sport sometimes. Carlos and I always say, we can watch all the tape we want, but sometimes these people come in, they look like completely different fighters than what they look like on tape. Maybe we see that from Oliveira, but until I see it, I'm not going to pick it, so give me Luciano here. She's not had a submission victory in her MMA career. This would be a great time, I think, for her to mix in the grappling if she has any. And like Carlos said, Oliveira does swing a little bit wild, which gives Luciano the opportunity to duck under for level changes. Stephanie Luciano is more of a kickboxer, Muay Thai style striker. She's very much on the forward pressure. She lost a close split decision with Sam Hughes, but I think Sam Hughes is definitely underrated when it comes to the women's division here at 115. She's definitely somebody that can, kind of give you a hard time, especially with her cardio. So I think Oliveira is definitely a step down. So if you're having a close fight with Sam Hughes to play MMA math a little bit, you definitely should be taking advantage of a woman like Oliveira. When you look at the opponents as well of Oliveira, she's most of her opponents are like 0-0, 0-1, 0-3. They've got some really questionable records on that 7-4 record, and she's even losing to some of those fighters. So when you're also losing to Lisboa as well, that doesn't fill me with much confidence. She's, as I said in the first fight, seems like she should hang up her gloves, and she's been on the absolute decline. I know it seems like I'm hating on Lisboa. I love you, really. But I haven't been really impressed with anything I've seen from Oliveira on tape. Lisboa is one of the people she's lost to in recent years. And even then, that was 2 years ago. So it's really hard for me to say anything other than the fact that Oliveira could catch her on the feet or maybe come back as a new and improved fighter. But until I see it, I can't pick it. So give me the kickboxing here of Stephanie Luciano. She seems faster. She seems more technical. She's obviously had a close fight with a decent opponent inside the UFC, and she can always mix in takedowns if she has them. So Stephanie Luciano is the only right side for me to pick here. And anybody that seems to thinks they have this read on Oliveira, I want to know how you can honestly pick this girl in a fight here against any UFC level competition. And next up, we have Drew Dober taking on Kyle Prepolec. Carlos, who you got in this one?
I went with Drew Dober. I think Dober should be able to get this done. Prepolec is not, super impressive. I mean, he's, as you could say, well-rounded. He can fight everywhere, but probably can't fight well in every spot. And I just think Dober can do a lot more damage. But the other thing too is that Dober sometimes allows himself to get stung because in the first round he kind of takes him a second to find his rhythm. And Prepolec, he landed a shot on Benoit Saint Denis, but it wasn't anything that was crazy that was going to change the fight. It just landed, and the crowd went crazy. So I go, if he lands something over, Dober's also been known to get hit, come back, and they call the guy Prepolec the kill shot. And I go, maybe he carries a little bit of sting that I just haven't seen yet. I don't know. You could tell he's loading up on his shot, so maybe he does. I don't know, but Dober's been in some wars, so hopefully he doesn't get his bell rung early because maybe he won't come back from it. But I don't see that happening. I know you're going to tell me I put too much thought into this with Prepolec here, and I just think that although he's a slower fighter, he's not very skillful. I just think that Dober allows himself to get clipped, and I just don't want to see that happen. And not that Prepolec doesn't deserve to win, but I don't see any way he should be able to beat Dober.
Yeah, Prepolec's trash. Honestly, give me Drew Dober here. This is kind of crazy to me. No, I'm just messing. Prepolec's okay. I don't necessarily have anything against the guy. I just don't think he's UFC level. Carlos is right when he says he's very slow. He is unathletic to me. And you saw in that Benoit Saint-Denis fight that Benoit Saint-Denis could have done pretty much whatever he wanted to Prepolec. I'm surprised it even took him 2 rounds to get him out of there. The guy is pretty much there for the fact that he is Canadian, fighting on a Canadian card, as a guy that's kind of well known in the area. And when he fought against Benoit Saint-Denis, he couldn't defend the takedown. He got head and arm choked. So I obviously think if Drew Dober wants to all of a sudden mix in some grappling, he definitely could. Drew Dober is on a 3-fight losing streak himself, so maybe he sees the opening there that Prepolec's been taken down and submitted multiple times. But one thing you know about Drew Dober is the guy, he's got a hell of a chin on him that at this point in his career is kind of fading him. He was known for his chin, and in his previous 2 fights, knocked out by Gene Silva, or Dr. Stoppage, excuse me, and obviously knocked out by Manuel Torres. But, I mean, they're high-level guys. This isn't a guy that he's fighting in Prepolec. He's a guy I don't consider to be UFC level. Drew Dober, obviously, very, very forward pressure style, in your face, kind of take one to give one. And I think that's going to be enough here for him to get it done. Dober doesn't throw a ton of kicks. He just likes to pressure you and get into the boxing and really just try to knock you out, or he ends up getting knocked out. And like Carlos said, Prepolec's nickname is the kill shot. We haven't seen that from him, so until I see it from him, I'm not going to pick it. So Drew Dober, I think he walks him down here. He's a big favorite for a reason. I think he should find the knockout here. Prepolec hasn't actually been knocked out in his whole MMA career so far out of 27 fights. So the way I see it is this might go to the judges. Dober might, end up getting clocked at some point late in the round 2 and 3. But until I see Prepolec actually, kind of show me his UFC level, I think Dober's too fast, too much forward pressure, and he hits too hard. So give me Drew Dober here to win this one on the feet. Suck it, Prepolec. And next up, we have Danny Barlow taking on Jourdain Santos. Carlos, who you got in this one?
I went with Danny Barlow, but I still don't even feel too good with that, because Barlow should be able to land that left hand right down the middle. And Santos, he keeps his guard wide, doesn't really keep his hands up, and he just he doesn't really know how to walk backwards. He doesn't know how to circle out. He doesn't know 3/4 turns. He doesn't know lateral movement. He just comes forward, and if he's not going to land on you. But the other thing too is, like, even when he does throw, like, he's not throwing with the big pop enough to really get you out of there. And anybody that makes a big fight, like, made it a fight with Ozzy Diaz, you know what I mean? Like, I can't really say that you're going to give Danny Barlow any problems. But Barlow, I think this is he's moving up for this one, correct? Like, I think he usually fought at 170. Now he's fighting 85.
I believe so.
I don't think that's going to make a difference. I still think he's probably going to be able to at least get that shot off. And I don't know if he finishes him. He should, I think. I know maybe Santos is tougher than I think, but I just think that there's really nothing. His athleticism, his movement, his that left hand down the middle is sharp. He loves to attack the lead leg. So everything Barlow does should be able to take Santos out of his game, and he should get this done. So I'm going to go Barlow.
Yeah, right there with you, man. I'm glad that you brought up that previous fight with Ozzy Diaz for Santos. Great fight. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. 2 guys, rock'em sock'em robot style. Give it to the fans on early prelims. Definitely a one to watch. Enjoyed that fight, but my whole thing here is, obviously you are right when you say Danny Barlow is moving up from 170 to 185. I always thought that Danny Barlow was a very, very good athlete, very, very fast. And obviously him getting, knocked out and losing to Sam Patterson, I don't necessarily think that's a bad loss, but I think at the time, I think people were very high on Danny Barlow and were surprised that he wasn't able to knock out a chinny guy in Sam Patterson. But this matchup to me is designed to get Danny Barlow back in the win column. Obviously him coming off of Contender Series, I think the UFC was quite high on him. Brash talking, kind of cool accent, definitely somebody they want to promote. Good athlete, very fast hands. I just think that that fight didn't really pan out for him, and this is a get right spot for him. Santos is far too hittable. You see, and as Carlos mentioned, when he fought against Ozzy Diaz, he's kind of going back and forth. He's getting tagged a lot. He does have a nice jab. He is very heavy forward pressure, but it's measured. But he's far too hittable for me. He has a good low kick and a good jab, and I think that right hand that he throws doesn't have enough crack on it to really test the chin of Barlow. And I just think this one realistically should end in a knockout. Barlow is far too athletic. I think he's going to be able to throw shots that Santos is not going to see coming. And I think that this move up to 185 might serve him well based on the speed advantage I think he's going to have, especially against a guy in Santos, who's not that athletic. I even wrote down here in my notes, he's a little bit stiff and kind of just ready to be hit. I think he likes to give one to get one. Obviously, he showed in that previous fight he can take a punch. Maybe Danny Barlow, gets him all the way to the judges' scorecards here, but it's a one-sided kind of, beat down here from Danny Barlow. But either way, I see Barlow getting his hand raised either with the knockout or by the judges' scorecards by maybe even a 10-8 round in there at some point. But give me Danny Barlow to get this one done. I feel pretty confident in him this week. But I know Carlos said you're not too confident, but I feel like this is one they've given him to kind of, if you are who you say you are, this is the fight to show it.
The only reason I say that too is because I also picked Sam Patterson to beat him because I could see the reasoning why that was going to happen. So I was like, forward pressure to Santos. I don't know if that'll get him tired, but there should be no reason that he doesn't beat Santos.
I do remember actually you saying that you did pick Sam Patterson. I do remember that. But I am interested to see who you got in this one. Next up, we got Kyle Nelson taking on Matt the Steamroller Frevola. Carlos, who you got in this one?
Yeah, this one it's a little difficult. I don't like where I went with it because I keep going back and forth on it, but I went with Steamroller. I went with him because
I was hoping you would do that.
I think that I just think that Kyle Nelson, I think, is a better fighter than Frevola. You know what I mean? I think he's more calculated. I think on the ground he has more control. I think he's a little bit more fluid in his motions on the ground from transition from one position to another. I think striking, he's obviously not as wild. But what I do think is Frevola being a little wild is what makes him a little bit more dangerous for Nelson, whereas he was I'm trying to remember who knocked out Nelson.
Steve Garcia.
Last fight. Garcia, yeah. And Steve Garcia is a little wild and a little explosive, and that's what Frevola is. And it's not that he's unpredictable. Frevola will throw like a flying knee and he'll throw some punches, some elbows and knees or whatever he can get his hands on. And sometimes he's doing a pirouette and throwing a punch at the same time, just spinning away. It's very awkward sometimes, but he explodes into everything, and he's got a little pop behind. I think that sometimes that could catch Nelson off guard, just like Garcia did. Personally, I would always go with someone like Nelson because he's a little bit more technical, and he's a good fighter. He's a solid fighter. But I'm going to take Frevola in this, and I think that we hear the chance of Steamroller. What do you think?
Steamroller. I'm going Kyle Nelson. You pretty much made the I just wanted to say it, to be honest. I felt left out. You made all the case for me for Kyle Nelson. I actually thought you were going to flip your pick. You made all the great points. Like, yeah, he's a better fighter. He's more well-rounded. And I'm picking Steamroller. I'm going with Kyle Nelson just for the reasons pretty much that Carlos said. So pretty short breakdown here for me. I don't think there's any shame in losing to Steve Garcia. I think he's an ascending fighter. He's obviously now in the top 5 since his victory over Calv. I think when you look at the matchup as well, Nelson overall, I would say he's the more well-rounded, composed fighter. Both guys can wrestle, both guys can strike, but I think Nelson's one of these guys that he picks his openings. He's shown an ability to defend takedowns and keep fights where he wants them, and also to mix in wrestling to take the fight where he wants the fight to go. To me, Frevola is a guy that he wants to hit you and he wants to hurt you, but at times he's wild. He leaves openings in order for him to try to land, and I think that's definitely something that I don't like. And you saw that in the ZM fight. You saw that in the Benoit Saint-Denis fight. He will, kind of in the Benoit Saint-Denis fight, for example, getting head kick knocked out, he pretty much turned his whole back and ran away just to create separation. I just think that that's something I can't get out of my head. And when you see a guy like ZM as well knock him out brutally with that knee, 35 years old, getting knocked out brutally in his previous 2 fights, a guy that's reckless. Don't get me wrong, he can always land. He's always got power. You don't have a name like Steamroller because you sit and take people to unanimous decisions. He knocks people out on the feet, but I just think that Nelson's going to be a little bit of a cut above. Maybe both guys' chins have gone, and it's just a case of whoever lands, which definitely would be live here. But give me Kyle Nelson here to get this one done, just being the more complete, more composed fighter. And a loss to Steve Garcia doesn't necessarily change my opinion of you too much.
I totally agree with you. I want to change my pick right now, but I'm going steamroller all day.
And next up, we have Aoriqileng taking on Cody Gibson. Carlos, who you got in this matchup?
Um, I'm gonna go with Cody Gibson on this one. I think that kind of the same thing I said in the last fight. I think that Gibson kind of his guard is a little low. He could always punch over, around, through his guard, and that's what uh, Eurolink, I can't remember his name, but that's what he would do. But what I think is Yerling, whatever. I'm trying to remember it, but anyway,
Aoriqileng.
he's Richie Lang. That's it. There, he's trying. He's trying to stay on the feet more than anything, and he does have pretty good striking. He does attack the lead leg, and he does throw some straight shots. I just think that Cody Gibson is probably going to be able to get into him at some point and take him down. Plus, I think him having a little bit more of the reach advantage makes that guy have to take him down. You know what I mean? Like makes it as he comes forward, he's gonna have to try to get through that. It's gonna expose him a little bit, and he's gonna be able to clinch him up, get him against the cage, and work his magic from there. So I'm gonna go with Cody Gibson. I think Gibson will get it done. I don't think it's gonna be pretty. I think it's gonna be a dogfight, as most Gibson's fights are, but I think he's going to get it done, probably on the ground more than anything.
This is a real tough one for me. I'm not going to lie. Cody Gibson's shown in his previous two fights before he fought them on Blackshear and was submitted that he can come in and he can grapple, he can wrestle, he can take you to the ground, smother you, and either submit you or ride you out for a decision. But we've seen with Aoriqileng in the past, the Mongolian murderer. He will come in and he'll throw bombs. He wants to look to take your head off. Sometimes he overextends, and he can obviously get taken down in those sequences. We saw that in the Raul Rojas Jr. fight. He was able to take his back, control him on the ground at times, and I definitely think Cody Gibson could get takedowns here. My one concern with Cody Gibson is I'm putting a lot of trust into a guy that basically needs to fight for 3 rounds, not get knocked out, control you on the ground. And also, he's 3-6 in the UFC. This guy's not good. He's 38 years old. His chin could fall apart at any moment. And you've got a guy in Aoriqileng that's always live with power. So I don't necessarily like it. I don't really want to say that I feel like I have this crazy good angle here where I think Cody Gibson's a great underdog to pick. But I'm actually going to pick, ever so slightly Gibson, but don't be surprised if he gets knocked out here or loses. I mean, his victories are over Brian Kelleher and I'm just trying to think who the other guy is. It will come to me in a second. Another guy that's not UFC level. Can you remember who his opponent was, Carlos? Cody Gibson's previous
Trying
one?
to.
I'm just going to look it up real quick. Give me 1 second, ground and pounders. Had it here. Chad Anheliger, another guy that's not UFC level. So when you're talking about his victories inside the UFC, they're guys that either cut or retired or not necessarily good fighters themselves. So I don't put a lot of trust and a lot of stock into Cody Gibson himself. And I think that a guy like Aoriqileng is going to be desperate for a victory, desperate to have some sort of name against a guy that's fought in the UFC for a while. And the Mongolian murderer carries power. So I wouldn't be surprised if he pulls off the upset here. But give me Cody Gibson here to wrestle fuck him for 3 rounds. And it's kind of a really boring fight to put so close to the main card. But give me Cody Gibson to get it done. And next up, we have Park Hyun-sung taking on Bruno Silva. And I'm interested to see who you got in this matchup.
Silva in this one. I think Park is very. I think he's a very good grappler. I think he poses a submission threat even to Silva, even though Silva poses the same threats back. I think Bruno's very good on the ground as well, and I think that if Park doesn't come in sharp and he wants to take this to the ground, it might be a bad decision. I think he should probably keep it standing. But I also think that Silva's a little faster on his feet. He's always moving around, bouncing in and out. Unfortunately, he goes straight in, straight out. So there's no angles, no nothing to change on it. So he's very predictable, and he's going to be the shorter guy. And I just feel that he's going to be just a little bit busier. He's a little faster. I think he's going to push the pace and he's going to beat him to the next move. And I just think maybe Park will be fighting from behind a little bit, like trying to get that. But I could be stunned because he's a good fighter, Park. I think he's got some good upside. I just don't. I just think right now it's a little too soon for him to fight Silva. I don't expect the same outcome as when he fought Tatsuro Taira, but I do think that Silva is a little bit, just that little bit better, and I think that.
Yeah, I'm right there with you on that one. I think this is kind of a big step up for Park as well, and I'm not necessarily sold on him that he's at the level of Bruno Silva, which has made this one kind of difficult for me. But I think it's crazy that Bruno Silva is a 2-1 underdog in this fight, because when you look at Park's Hyun Sung, he's got wins over Carlos Hernandez, who's not UFC level, and Shannon Ross, who has one of the worst chins inside the UFC. And, him losing to Tatsuro Taira, taking that fight on short notice and losing the way that he did, I don't think that that's necessarily a bad loss whatsoever. The guy can box. The guy does have some decent grappling himself, just not on the level of Taira. Taking that fight on short notice as a guy that's, top 3, top 2 in the division, might even be fighting for a title soon. There's no shame in that loss. And, you look at Bruno Silva, I could say the same thing. The guy lost to Manel Kopp, who's, again, in that top 3 bracket, fighting for a title soon. Joshua Van, that probably is fighting for the next title. And he's, losing back-to-back against those guys. And you have to kind of ask yourself the question, what has Park Hyun-sung here done to be this big of a favorite over a guy that's losing to the top of the division? So, you could look at the age, you could look at the size discrepancy here and say, Park might be able to bully him and just use his size, or, he might be on the ascend, whereas Bruno Silva is kind of on the back foot now at 35 as an older guy in the weight class. I'm actually going to pick Park, but I have a feeling that Bruno Silva might prove me wrong here, and I do understand why Carlos has picked Bruno Silva here. I definitely think he might be somebody we look at in the best bets. We might be able to get a +3.5 on Bruno Silva for him to win just one round, but the pick's going to be Park here for me. I think he's going to show an improvement since his last loss to Tatsuro Taira, but I don't think that he should be this big of a favorite, that's for sure. And next up, we have Davey Grant taking on Charles Jourdain. Carlos, who you got in this matchup?
Brother, this was a tough one here because I like Davey Grant, right? He's always game. He's ready to go. He's fast. His shots sometimes come out a little looping, but he's throwing 100 miles an hour on everything. He's got heavy leg kicks. I think Jourdain is going to be just a step quicker. I think he can land some hard shots, and I think I'm number one. I'm going with Jourdain, but I don't feel that confident with it because Davey Grant has been one of those guys that has been known to blow up someone's streak. He's been known to these young up and comers. He's been able to end some of their their streak. Their put a L on their record, and I'm like, this guy has the ability to do it, and he's 39 years old. He comes in, his cardio's there, his conditioning's there, he's strong, he's got powerful strikes. I think Jourdain has the exact same thing that Grant offers. I just think with the youth on his side, I think he's a little sharper, and I think his strikes come out a little bit tighter, a little bit straighter. I'm going to give him the edge on it. So I'm going to go with Jourdain.
Yeah, Davey Grant's been on an absolute tear, and 39 years old here at bantamweight. He's definitely looked impressive. He's not looked like he's slowing down. He's got good forward pressure, good kickboxing. I do agree with you that I think Charles Jourdain's striking is probably a little bit more athletic, a little bit faster. I'm actually going to pick Davey Grant. He's just one of these guys at the minute that he just looks like the ageless wonder, and he did a good job in that Damon Blackshear fight in the first round. He got taken down. He showed a good ability to be able to get back to his feet and ultimately stuff the takedowns and win rounds 2 and 3 with his striking. And to me, Charles Jourdain is a little bit inconsistent. And don't get me wrong, Davey Grant could fall apart at any point. We're talking 10 years his senior here, but Jourdain's just one of these guys to me. He's 7-7 inside the UFC and a submission victory over of a Victor Henry, who's also an older fighter, doesn't necessarily fill me with much confidence to make me pick you. I just trust in Davey Grant's, kind of rise at the moment, his momentum. He's definitely somebody that's, believing in himself and his skills. He's, in there to not necessarily try to mix in all of his skill sets as far as becoming a grappler and all of a sudden trying to take you down. He knows where his bread is buttered. He knows where he wants to keep fights. And I think that he can pull off another upset here as the slight underdog. And I know that Charles Jourdain is always live for a submission. I do think he's going to be the more faster athletic striker here, but give me Davey Grant here. I think if this one ends up on the feet back and forth, both guys can have success. If Jourdain mixes in the grappling, I think Davey Grant's going to do a good enough job here to keep this one on the feet. So give me the Englishman, going with my hometown boy, hometown hero here over in England, Davey Grant, to get it done.
Not a bad pick, man. You're making me rethink again.
Go with the gut, big fella. Go with the gut. I'm interested to see who you pick on this one because we know
I'm going with Jourdain.
You're going with Jourdain? I want to see who you pick in this one because we got a ground and pound a favorite here. We got Jasudavicius taking on Manon Fiorot. Carlos, who you got in this matchup?
Okay, so this is the thing is we like Jasudavicius, okay? I think she's a good fighter. And against Andrade, I think that when she hyped me up because she was like, oh, I went to Thailand, I've been training, and I was dropping girls at practice, okay? And she stung Andrade in the fight. You know what I mean? That made Andrade want to shoot. And I'm trying to think, can she do that to Fiorot? And I don't know. Like, I don't even know if she's going to get it to the ground because Fiorot's takedown defense is pretty damn good. And I'm like, even when she goes down, she's going to get right back up anyway. So how is Jasudavicius going to win this? I don't think she can stay strike for strike with her on the feet. Fiorot's just too fast. Her movement is too slick. Throws and combinations. I don't see a way for Jasudavicius to win, but I also didn't take her on the last one against Andrade, so I totally wanted to prove me wrong. But I'm going to go with Manon Fiorot on this one. I think she just has all the abilities that Jasudavicius doesn't, and I think if this went to the ground, I'd like to see if Jasudavicius could just stay on her like human crazy glue. And I just think that if that's the case, I think Fiorot's going to get up. I don't think Jasudavicius can keep her down. And I think that on the feet, I think Fiorot's just too much.
Literally my exact breakdown. I share the same sentiments Carlos does. Definitely rooting for Jasudavicius. Suck it, booze has always been a big favorite here on the Ground and Pound podcast since day one. Definitely rooting for Jazz, but I just don't see a way that Jasmine's going to keep this fight on the ground and ultimately hold down Fiorot for 3 straight rounds. Fiorot's proven she's got good takedown defense. She's a very big, strong, physically powerful woman. The power in this woman's hands is just undeniable. Carlos knows what I'm doing. We have an inside joke about the amount that they ride the power of Manon Fiorot and how powerful her hands are, but she's not all that. But we know that she's got the kickboxing. She's got the good credentials here on the feet, especially over a woman like Jasudavicius. I think when this one really just comes down to Fiorot keeps this one on the feet, she outstrikes Jasmine. Jasmine is very tough. I think this one makes it to the judges' scorecards. I think you're just going to be looking at a unanimous 29-28 or a 30-27 here for Fiorot. Jasmine is a great fighter, but once she can't implement the wrestling, I think she's going to be a step behind in the striking. Manon Fiorot obviously only losing to Valentina Shevchenko in that fight. We had her as the dog of the week previously, Valentina in that fight against Manon Fiorot. Other than that, Fiorot's looked great inside the UFC. I don't plan on that stopping now, even at the age of 35. I think she defends the takedowns against Jazz and ultimately wins with the striking. So give me the Frenchman here, French woman, excuse me, to win over the Canadian here on this Vancouver card. And next up, we have Marlon Chito Vera taking on Aiemann Zahabi. Carlos, who you got in this matchup?
I'm gonna go with Aiemann Zahabi on this one. I'm a big fan of Vera, but the one thing that gets me is his output. The guy has heavy punches, heavy kicks. Whatever he throws is usually heavy, whether it's a knee, an elbow, a kick. He does all this cardio training that he talks about, the miles that he's running, but when it comes time to throw, he's very low output. And Zahabi, I think, defensively, rolls with his strikes pretty well, checks kicks, and once he starts to get loose, the movement is there. He's moving all around his fighter. He's using good lateral movement. 3/4 turns are on point, and he's got long strikes. He doesn't like to sit in the pocket and throw with you. He likes to keep you at his range, and he likes to come in and throw when he's ready. So I got to go with Zahabi. I think keeps a nice guard, rolls with punches. I think Vera's going to have a hard time getting him hurt. I think when he's attacking the body, um, Zahabi just like, he knows how to hollow himself out when you go to the body too. And yeah, I got to go with Zahabi. He's a very smart fighter, so I got to take him.
Yeah, two for Zahabi here. Same exact breakdown from me. Marlon Chito Vera, man. I mean, when you look at his record, the guy it's questionable. When you look at the guy, he's lost to Davidson Figueiredo, lost to Sean O'Malley, win over Pedro Munoz, who was on a 3-fight losing streak, and arguably, I can't remember if he retired after that fight or whether he's retired currently. Corey Sandhagen lost in a split decision that should never have been a split decision. He got absolutely beat pillar to post in that fight. And a victory over Dominic Cruz that I just want to point out that Vera was losing pretty much every round to Dominic Cruz until he knocked him out with that head kick. So he was very questionable last 5 performances from Marlo Chito Vera, and Carlos hit the nail on the head. It's no secret. It's just his output. The lack of volume in his fights. He just stands there, he takes a beating, and he lands one big shot, and that makes fights close. But until that point, he's kind of losing until he's winning. Whereas Zahabi, like Carlos said, is a very, very smart fighter. I think this is a great matchup for him. And the question that I always had with Zahabi is he can crack. He doesn't necessarily make a whole lot of mistakes. He is a very smart fighter, but can he get it done against the big names? And I think he can get it done here against Vera. I think that they're going to have a great game plan here. Stick and move, land volume over the course of 3 rounds. If Vera's there to be hit, land the big shots, but don't take any crazy risks here. And just really outpoint fight Vera to basically get the victory in front of your hometown or home country here. I think Zahabi is smart enough not to get into a brawl. He knows that the power that Vera does have, unless we see a different Chito Vera here, this should be all Aiemann Zahabi, and I'm going to pick him here to get it done. I think this is a back and forth striking affair where we see more volume from Zahabi and a win on the judges' scorecards. And that brings us to the co-main event here for UFC Vancouver. And if you haven't already, hit that like and subscribe button as we break down Kevin, the Trailblazer Holland, taking on Mike Malott. Carlos, who you got in the co-main event?
I do want to go Kevin Holland in this one. You know what I mean? Because just the advantages when it comes to striking, but his advantages don't really mean too much because he doesn't really stay too tight and technical. He loops a lot of hooks, and his kicks are a little wild too when he throws it. And on the ground, Mike Malott, I would say like, yeah, Kevin can submit him if they get on the ground and he gets a slick submission on there. That's fine. He rolls into position, but Mike Malott, he competed in grappling tournaments. I think he still does, and he keeps grappling fresh. He's a good wrestler, and I think against Neil Magny, he, I think he made that mistake where he was trying to get him out of there. He was focused on trying to get him out of there, and got tired. And I have seen him get a little fatigued later on because weight class, he looks like he carries a pretty good amount of muscle on him, and he's a little stiff in his movements when he's striking. So I can see why and how he can get fatigued. I just think that if this goes to the ground, I think he can get Kevin on the ground and he can control him down there for. I think this is going to be a 3-round fight, but either way, I think he can control him on the ground and maybe not do much damage, maybe not get a submission, but just the control time. Kevin's going to have to do a lot of work. He's on the feet, and he's going to have to, and that's the issue is that nothing is really like Kevin can throw punches, but he's not the most accurate. He kind of wings a couple of hooks and he'll catch it. He throws kicks, but they're not really the most accurate kicks either. He'll throw to the leg and just kind of flip it out there. He'll throw up top and just flip his leg up, but he can't really aim it all the time. And uh, with all those height advantages, reach advantages, he should be able to get this done. I want Kevin Holland to get this done, but I think Mike Malott's going to probably control him on the ground. And I think once he gets Kevin down, Kevin's going to try to play jiu-jitsu off his back, and that's going to burn the clock for him in Malott's favor.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. At the start of the week, I definitely had Kevin Holland as my pick. I thought I was going to make him dog of the week, but I agree with Carlos, actually. When you look at this matchup a little bit closer, you think about previous fights that Mike Malott's had. I think really the only advantage here that Kevin Holland has is UFC experience and guys that he's fought, along with his long sort of reach advantage here at 170. And we saw in the Mike Malott fight against Neil Magny. Neil Magny, obviously a guy who's a pretty big, long, lengthy guy in the division. Mike Malott, 5-1 inside the UFC, and that's his only loss. And that fight against Neil Magny, he was controlling Neil Magny for long periods of that fight, and obviously taking him down, controlling him on the ground. And that's pretty much the exact path to victory he needs to have here against Kevin Holland. And that's been the thorn in the side of Holland, right? We've seen at 180, 185 at middleweight that guys have, bullied him to the ground. Malott is a pretty explosive guy, especially early in fights. He can get you to the ground. Like Carlos said, he has good submissions. He's competed in grappling. And even though I do know that Kevin Holland, and we both know Kevin Holland is a guy that, is that Travis Luda jiu-jitsu. The guy is good off of his back. And we saw that in previous fights that he, like Carlos said, he is going to be burning long periods of the fight here, laying on his back, looking up at the stars, while Mike Malott sits there and pounds elbows in his face. And even though we know that Mike Malott is kind of a guy that we thought got fraud checked a little bit against Neil Magny, he did come back and have two performances there, getting the second round knockout against what's his name? Chuck Buffalo, Charles Radke. And obviously the kind of streaky performance there against Giles on the feet. But I think his striking's competent enough to be able to hang with Kevin. He's technical enough. He's athletic enough. I think, like Carlos said as well, that Kevin's not necessarily known for being a guy that sets up a ton of shots. He's just relying on his sort of his length and just kind of winging and throwing punches out there. And when he does, I think the level change comes from Malott. We saw in Contender Series, he had a very nice explosive double leg. I think you'd see something similar here. He takes Kevin down, controls him on the ground. We see a boring fight, but ultimately he gets it done either through unanimous decision or some sort of late stoppage here on the ground. Either way, I like Malott. I think it's a trap, but Kevin Holland here is an underdog. I think it's to try and get you to look in the way of Kevin Holland, especially with the height and reach. And that brings us to the main event here for UFC Vancouver. We've got Brandon Allen, UFC Vancouver. We do love a good cougar here on the Ground and Pound podcast. We got Brandon Allen taking on Reinier de Ridder in the main event. And if you haven't already, hit that like and subscribe button as we hear from Carlos of who he's got in the main event.
I went with Reinier de Ridder because he's streaking right now, and he's streaking against some decent competition. Brandon Allen, I think, is stand-up wise, he should be able to best him on the feet. I just have a feeling that with de Ridder walking him down, he must be like very strong. That's all I got to say. Because once he gets his hands on some guys, they tend to slow down the pace. It's not like he's outstriking them, but just them going backwards. The mental game of he's coming forward. How can I stop him from coming forward? And unless you can tag him like Whitaker did, and even then he got right back up and kept coming forward. He's very big for the weight class. He must have a grip on him. He must have the size, the weight, just to keep pressing you. And Allen, when you keep pressing him, he's gonna want to go to the ground at some point, and I think that's where it's going to be a problem. Um, then there's the awkwardness of Brandon Allen is very technical standing, but de Ridder doesn't really want to stand with you. He throws these weird looping hooks, but those knees are dangerous right down the middle. And I don't know, man. And he's going to be backing Brendan Allen up unless Allen can just put him out with one shot. And, de Ridder's 35. He's been taking shots like that for a couple, for his whole career and walking through them. One of these nights might be the night where he doesn't get back up. But if he doesn't put him out with one shot, it's going to be the same thing. He's just going to be stalking you, and he's going to be closing the distance, and he's going to be working you to the ground. Now you're going to have to be peeling him off, wrist control, creating separation over and over again while backing up, while thinking, how do I keep this guy off me? I think that's what wears you down too, is mostly the mental part of the game is I can't keep him off me. So I'm going to go with de Ridder in this one. Brendan Allen had a lot of success when he fought oh my goodness, what's the name of that gentleman from Scotland there?
Paul Craig.
Paul Craig. He had a lot of success against Paul Craig, but Paul Craig does not offer that I'm coming forward and I can hurt you with something. but Renier de Ridder does, and that's what's going to keep him honest as he's going backwards. And he just can't throw something because if there's an opening, de Ridder's going to find it and probably land that knee. And those are some heavy knees that he's throwing in there. So I'm going to take de Ridder. I think he's going to be able to pull it off. Brendan Allen, I think he's been on a pretty good run too. And I just think that Renier is just, he's awkward. He's the most awkward guy I've ever seen. So, and he's pulling it off. He's pulling off these victories. So I'm going to have to take him on it.
Just to touch on your point as well, which is a good point that you made, that I think the only way Brendan Allen can win this fight is a one-shot punch. Is Brendan Allen's not actually had a knockout on the feet since 2018, before he was in the UFC, and he was against a 10-6 opponent. So most of his victories do come via decision or submission, and I just don't think that either of those path to victories there are going to be available for Brendan Allen taking on a guy as kind of unorthodox as Renier de Ridder. And I share the same sentiments that Carlos does about de Ridder. He's got a very unorthodox style, but it works for him. And here at 6'4", he gets you in the clinch, he beats you up with knees, and if the fight hits the mat, the guy is obviously very long for the division and can snatch up chokes. We've seen Brendan Allen lose in a grappling competition against Caio Barlow. He got out-wrestled by Anthony Hernandez, got out-wrestled by Imavov and outstruck by Imavov, and I just don't really see what Brendan Allen's going to bring to the table here, stepping up on a little bit of short notice, as Renier de Ridder was supposed to fight against Fluffy Hernandez in this matchup, which I think Fluffy would have had the better of him. So I'm sure Renier de Ridder's been working on his grappling and his takedown defense as well if Allen does decide to shoot. But I like Renier de Ridder here. I think that he gets this one done against Allen. Allen's kind of been on a little bit of a kind of shaky path here, fighting the top end of the division, don't get me wrong. But the thing that really has me really heavy leaning on the side of de Ridder here is Brendan Allen's fight IQ. He'll be having success on the feet, he'll be landing a couple of good shots, and then all of a sudden he'll shoot in for a takedown, or he'll pull guard, or he'll do something that's just, he's having success, and then he just decides to move away from the game plan that's giving him success. And I feel like if he does that here against de Ridder, it's going to cost him. I think de Ridder might catch him in some sort of triangle, or get on top and beat him up, or land some sort of shot and get into the clinch and land some knees like he did with Bo Nickel, get him to the ground and submit him. I just trust what Renier de Ridder is, which is an unorthodox, tall guy, big, strong guy for the division. Whereas Brendan Allen, if he keeps this one on the feet, he could definitely win with the striking. But I know at some point he's probably going to pull guard or mix in some grappling and ultimately lose here to a better grappler. So give me Renier de Ridder here in the main event to get this one done at UFC Vancouver. See, I said it again. We love a good cougar here on the Ground and Pound podcast. Carlos, do you love a cougar?
Who doesn't?
And that's the whole breakdown here for UFC Vancouver. Cougar. See, I just can't get cougars out of my head. Hit that like and subscribe button if you love a good cougar here on the Ground and Pound podcast. And we'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.
Peace.